It was Thursday evening in Houston, Texas, and I was alone in my kitchen reheating some leftover curry, my mind drifting to the spreadsheet I needed to finish before bed. My phone buzzed on the counter, a text notification lighting up its cracked screen. The message came from the family group chat, the one that included Dad, Mom, Aunt Carolyn, my sister Megan, even Emily, and Uncle Raymond, though Raymond never spoke much. I picked up the phone, wiping my hands on a dish towel, and read the words slowly, as if they might change before I finished. We think it's best if you step away for now. Megan needs space. We all do. Just beneath it, Aunt Carolyn reacted with a thumbs up emoji. No call, no discussion, just a message and a thumb. For a moment, I couldn't move. My eyes lingered on the screen as a hollow ache rose from deep in my chest, tight and unfamiliar, curling around my throat. There on the counter next to the half-warmed plate of curry sat a small silver key, old-worn smooth from years of use, the original key to the family's joint bank account. I had kept it as a sort of talisman, a reminder of the night I'd first opened that account, convinced I was helping hold my family together, a symbol of trust, of responsibility, of my quiet sacrifices. But in that moment, staring at their cold dismissal, the key seemed meaningless. My fingers brushed against its cold metal edge as I set my phone down, trying to keep my breath steady. My mind reeled not just from their message, but from the years that had led to this. Years of paying Mom's insulin prescriptions. Years of covering Dad's second mortgage when he got behind. Years of wiring Megan cash whenever her life spiraled again. And now they were telling me I should step away. I typed a reply. Understood. I'll respect that. And I'll step away from the family fund too. I didn't wait for a response. Instead, I picked up my laptop, logged into the online banking portal, and stared at the account I'd quietly managed for 5 years. That account wasn't just numbers on a screen. It was the financial lifeline that kept their lights on their bills, paid their lives stitched together. I removed my automatic contributions one by one until the total recurring payment read 0. And then I closed the account altogether. It was silent at first, eerily so. But just after 3:11 a.m., my phone began to vibrate on the nightstand, buzzing again and again until it seemed the device might shake itself apart. When I finally looked, there were 89 missed calls. My father's voicemail was the last one, his voice, shaky, frightened, desperate. What happened? The bank flagged everything. Are you okay? Why would you? I didn't bother to listen to the rest. I replied to his earlier text with a single sentence: I'm honoring your decision. And I meant it. But beneath my calm response, my mind was already racing through the years that had led to this fracture. It hadn't always been this way, or maybe it had, but I hadn't noticed. 5 years earlier, during Megan's second hospitalization, Dad had called me from the parking lot of a Walgreens, crying and overwhelmed. They won't admit her without insurance, he had said. We're tapped out. Without hesitation, I drained my entire savings to cover her rehab out of pocket. They called it a miracle afterward, a miracle no one ever thanked me for, let alone offered to repay. And it didn't stop there. When Mom's diabetes diagnosis came, I quietly began paying for her insulin. When Dad's hours were cut at the warehouse, I picked up their phone bills, the overdue utility payments, the mounting debts Megan left behind each time she relapsed. They gave me access to everything: account numbers, passwords, balances. Not because they trusted me, but because they didn't want to deal with it. Because I was the responsible one, which really meant I was the convenient one. That responsibility had consumed me. I downgraded my apartment, gave up vacations, spent lonely nights eating oatmeal at the kitchen table, while my family leaned on me oblivious. I had become their financial firewall, their unspoken backup plan, their silent safety net. But it was the Christmas 2 years ago that finally cracked me. Megan threw a tantrum after I told her I couldn't afford new tires for her car, not after I had just paid her rent. She told our parents I was judging her, and they texted me that night asking me to be more understanding. I didn't fight them. I didn't lash out. But something inside me froze, cold, hard, unyielding. That's when I began documenting everything. Every Venmo transaction, every medical copay, every time I bailed out Dad's checking account when he overdrafted. Not up that old bank key, the one I'd kept as a symbol of duty and trust, and without a word, I dropped it straight into the trash can beneath the sink. The sound it made was soft, barely a click, but it felt final. As I stood there, arms crossed tightly over my chest, watching the cursor blink in the group chat, I knew this was only the beginning. By dawn, their frantic calls would turn into panic, and soon they would realize what it really meant for me to step away. But they didn't know yet, and neither did I how deep this unraveling would go. By sunrise, I could already feel the shift. My phone was a minefield of notifications, missed calls, voicemails, desperate texts piling up, as if my silence alone would make them crumble faster. The morning air in Houston was heavy, thick with humidity, but the real weight was in my chest. Even as I sipped bitter coffee, the kind that burned the back of my throat, I could feel a strange calm settling over me. For once, I wasn't checking the balance on that cursed joint account. For once, my money was my own. But their panic was only just beginning. Dad's voice messages came one after another, increasingly frantic, like a man watching his world collapse in slow motion. "Michael, what happened?" "The mortgage bounced. The insurance, did you cancel it?" "The car's uninsured now. What did you do to the utilities account?" "The bank says there are multiple red flags." "Michael, please, you need to fix this. Fix this, fix this." As if I had broken something. As if I hadn't just stepped back honoring exactly what they'd asked for. Yet even as the guilt tried to creep in soft, familiar, and invasive like a fog, I reminded myself they had chosen this. They told me to step away. They didn't know what away really meant, but they would learn. Still it hurt. The ache wasn't sharp like anger. It was dull, bone-deep exhaustion, the kind that makes you realize how long you've been carrying a weight you never should have held. I thought about how it had started 5 years ago, when Megan's second hospitalization sent Dad spiraling into that Walgreens parking lot breakdown. How I'd emptied my savings account without hesitation. How they called it a miracle, but never once called me a hero. Not even a thank you. The truth was, they never wanted me. They wanted what I could provide. I was the embodiment of the American dream for them. Hardworking, reliable, endlessly giving. But they had forgotten that dreams are fragile things, easily broken when taken for granted. That morning, as I scrolled through their increasingly desperate messages, I didn't reply. I didn't even open them all. Instead, I grabbed my laptop, opened the spreadsheet I had been quietly building for years, a ledger of every dollar I had spent, every bill I had paid, every debt I had absorbed so they could pretend they were okay. Row after row of numbers that told the real story. It wasn't just a list of transactions. It was a record of my sacrifice. I let myself feel the anger, not rage, but a cold, clear indignation as I reviewed the numbers. Rent payments for Megan, insulin for Mom, overdraft fees for Dad. Even the Uber rides at 2 a.m. when they needed help. A careful, meticulous history that none of them had ever bothered to ask about. And now it was gone just like that because they decided I needed to step away. By late morning, Megan's turn came. A voicemail first, a whisper at the start, a scream by the end. "Michael, why would you do this? You knew I needed that payment. You knew I couldn't manage. How could you just abandon us like this?" She had no idea that what she called abandonment was the first breath of freedom I'd taken in years. Their entitlement was staggering. The audacity to call me cold, selfish, bitter after everything I had quietly done for them. After the holidays spent alone because they forgot to invite me. After birthday cards that never came. After 1,000 small ways they erased my presence except when they needed my wallet. Even my mother's pharmacy called me that afternoon, confused saying Mom's account had bounced and asking when payment would resume. I told them politely but firmly, I no longer manage that account. The pharmacist's pause on the line felt like an accusation, but I didn't back down. My voice was steady, even as my hands trembled, slightly old habits dying hard. That evening, the family regrouped. A Zoom invite appeared in my inbox from Emily, my cousin, the one who always sat silently on the sidelines, but now suddenly wanted to talk. It felt rehearsed before it even began. When I clicked join, their faces appeared in neat rectangles on the screen, Dad pacing behind Mom's stiff frame, Megan already crying, dabbing at her eyes, Aunt Carolyn perched in a chair wearing pearls and a scarf smug and ready to play judge. Emily opened with a soft, almost diplomatic tone. We just thought it would help to talk things through, Michael. But Megan cut in immediately, her voice cracking, eyes red and swollen. Why did you do this to us after everything we've been through? You just abandoned us. The word abandon made something inside me snap. My pulse quickened, my jaw clenched, but I didn't shout. Instead, I leaned forward, looking straight into the camera, my voice cool but sharp. After everything we've been through, you mean after I paid your rent? After I funded your rehab? After I got mocked for saying no to your yoga retreat? My words hung in the air like a blade. Megan stammered, That's not fair. But I interrupted her louder this time, sharper. You want fair. For 5 years, I've covered every financial mess you left behind. While you posted inspirational quotes about healing and self-care, I was balancing overdrafts, paying for late utilities, covering mom's medications, paying dad's mortgage, and the moment I hesitate, the moment I suggest that maybe, just maybe, it's time for someone else to step up, you exile me from the family chat like I'm disposable. Mom spoke for the first time, then her voice tight. It wasn't exile. We were giving you space too. The hypocrisy made me laugh, a bitter hollow sound that startled even me. No, you weren't giving me space, I shot back. You were choosing Megan again, just like always. You just found a polite way to tell me to disappear. Dad crossed his arms, his face red. You didn't have to cancel the fund. I met his gaze steady and cold. I didn't cancel it. I closed it. In my name. Funded with my money. Managed by me. Their silence was deafening, but I wasn't done yet. I reached to the folder beside me on my desk, opened it carefully, and clicked Share Screen. The spreadsheet appeared for all of them to see, line after line of payments, transactions, dates, amounts. Every dollar tracked. Rent, medical bills, groceries, utilities. Even that Arizona yoga retreat Megan wanted. The truth laid bare, undeniable and complete. Emily gasped quietly. Wow, who even keeps all this? Aunt Carolyn narrowed her eyes, her tone dripping with contempt. Someone who wanted to hold it over us. I didn't flinch. No, I replied, my voice low but firm. Someone who knew one day you'd try to gaslight him into thinking he made it all up. I clicked to the final tab of the spreadsheet, a running total in bold red text, 87,421.13. Dad recoiled from the camera like he'd been slapped. Mom's eyes widened, lips trembling. Megan buried her face in her hands. But I wasn't finished. The silence on that family Zoom was heavier than any scream they could have thrown at me. I kept my gaze steady, watching their faces rearrange themselves. Shock, guilt, denial, all folding into expressions that almost made me laugh. But the laugh wouldn't come. My chest felt tight, as if all the years I'd swallowed my words had turned into stone sitting behind my ribs. I broke the silence first, my voice low but cutting. That family fund. It was never a trust, it was a leash, and tonight I finally cut it. Dad flushed red, fists clenched as if my words were blows he couldn't block. "We trusted you," he shot back, voice strained and trembling. "No," I said, leaning forward close enough to the camera that they couldn't look away. "You used me." I could see Aunt Carolyn shifting uncomfortably, her pearls glinting in the afternoon light, as if she were presiding over a courtroom instead of a family meeting. Megan wiped at her face with a tissue. Her mascara smudged, but the tears felt hollow, like a performance she no longer believed herself. Without breaking eye contact, I clicked a final tab on my spreadsheet and let them see the total, 87,421.13. The number glowed on their screens in bold red. The truth in numbers undeniable. Dad took a half step back from his chair, rubbing his forehead as if that would erase the number staring back at him. Mom whispered, "You've been keeping tabs on us." Her voice cracked, horrified. But her words, those words finally unlocked something I'd held back for far too long. "No," I said firmly, leaning even closer. "I've been surviving you." Megan let out a shaky laugh that quickly turned into a bitter sneer. "You're just bitter, Michael. You always have been. No one gives you a gold star for being the good son. You want applause just for acting like an adult." That stung. Not because she was right, but because she'd always believed that lie, even as she took from me again and again. I swallowed hard, then spoke calmly, deliberately. "I don't want applause. I want boundaries. And I'm done being your financial safety net." Aunt Carolyn interjected with a smug smirk. "That's rich. You think money is the only thing that matters?" I didn't even blink. "No," I replied, deterred. "But it's the only thing any of you ever came to me for." Then came the moment they hadn't anticipated. I sat back in my chair, heart racing, fingers cold despite the Houston heat. I've already contacted the bank. All joint authorizations have been removed. My name is no longer on any account linked to any of you. The credit cards closed. The shared utilities canceled. Insurance premiums, you'll need to re-enroll yourselves. The shock on their faces was almost surreal, like they were witnessing a car crash they couldn't stop. But I wasn't done. "You wanted me to step away," I continued, keeping my tone steady, measured. "This is what that looks like." Mom gasped audibly, tears welling in her eyes. Dad's mouth moved, but no words came out. Megan looked like she'd been struck, her whole body sinking into the chair. Even Emily leaned back in her frame, her earlier attempt at diplomacy gone, replaced by stunned silence. And then I dropped the final hammer. I spoke to a lawyer, I said, watching their reactions closely. You'll be receiving documents this week. I'm formally dissolving any legal ties between me and the so-called family trust, which was never formalized anyway. But just in case anyone here gets any ideas about dipping into my credit or opening anything in my name ever again, those doors are now shut. Permanently. Megan let out a piercing shriek, her face twisted in disbelief. You're overreacting. You're cutting us off completely. Her voice cracked under the weight of her outrage. I held her gaze steady and unflinching. I'm protecting myself, I said simply. From now on, I am not your plan B, not your fallback, and definitely not your free ride. Dad sat back heavily, his shoulders sagging, looking like a man defeated, but unwilling to admit it. Mom quietly sobbed, now shaking her head, as if by doing so, she could undo the words I'd spoken. Megan slammed her laptop shut, her image disappearing instantly from the screen. The sound of her anger echoed even in the silence. Aunt Carolyn stayed staring coldly at me, then calmly reached forward and clicked leave meeting. Emily followed moments later, her expression unreadable. And just like that, the screen went blank. The call was over. But I sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the black screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. My fingers trembled, but not from fear. For the first time in years, the tremor was from release. The weight was gone. I rose from my chair slowly, my legs weak but steadying. As I crossed the kitchen, my eyes fell again on that trash can under the sink, where the old bank key now lay buried beneath crumpled napkins and empty coffee pods. A symbol I had clung to, now discarded. My phone lay on the counter silent at last. No buzzing, no pleading voicemails, no passive-aggressive texts. For the first time in years, peace. But I should have known better. The silence wouldn't last. And indeed, it didn't. Exactly 10 days later, an email arrived. No subject line, no sender name. I recognized a burner address clearly. Just one chilling sentence, "You've ruined everything." Attached to the message, screenshots of bills, Megan's eviction notice, a final warning from the power company, and most chilling of all, a denied credit card application with my name listed as the former co-signer. Their unraveling was beginning, and they still weren't done trying to drag me down with them. The email sat in my inbox like a ticking bomb. "You've ruined everything." No greeting, no explanation, just that sentence and a series of screenshots that spoke volumes. Megan's eviction notice, a final shut-off warning from the power company, and a denied credit card application with my name still clinging to it like a ghost. My throat felt tight, but I forced myself to breathe. They were unraveling quickly, chaotically, and yet even now, they were trying to make me responsible for their crash. I stared at the screen, leaning forward as if proximity would make it all make sense. A denied credit card app with my name as the former co-signer. They were still trying to leverage whatever scraps of authority they thought I hadn't stripped away. But I had, or at least I thought I had. My stomach turned, but I kept my fingers steady as I opened my credit monitoring app. Every account secure, no surprises, no mystery charges. I had sealed the cracks. Still, I could feel the old dread creeping in, the anxiety I thought I'd buried when I dropped that silver bank key into the trash. The fear that somewhere, somehow, they would find another way to drag me back. The dread would have to wait, though, because that same week, my mother showed up at my office. My assistant, wide-eyed and clearly unsure how to handle it, appeared in my doorway. "Michael, there's a woman in the lobby. She says she's your mother. She won't leave." For a moment, I considered not going out, just sitting there, pretending I was busy, letting the situation resolve itself. But I couldn't do that, not yet. So, I stood straight in my shirt and walked slowly to the lobby. And there she was. Susan Turner, my mother, pale, shaking, holding an envelope stuffed with crumpled papers that looked like they'd been handled 100 times. Her hair was a mess, her clothes less immaculate than usual. She looked fragile, but it wasn't a fragility that moved me anymore. It was the fragility of someone facing consequences for the first time. "Michael," she said, her voice brittle, almost breaking. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't say a word. My silence pressed on her harder than any accusation I could have spoken. She pressed us on desperation, cracking through her carefully rehearsed calm. "Your father's sleeping on the couch. Megan hasn't left her room in 3 days. The landlord's changing the locks next week." She paused, watching my face for any flicker of softness. There was none. Her eyes hardened for a moment, then she played her last card. "I raised you," she snapped, her voice suddenly fierce, desperate to reclaim the moral high ground. "I gave you life, and this is how you repay us." The words struck like a stone thrown through glass, but not for the reasons she intended. I laughed, not cruelly, not loudly, but hollowly, like air escaping from a cracked pipe. "You gave me life," I said quietly, my tone flat and deliberate, "and then you spent 30 years convincing me I owed you for it." She flinched, a small involuntary movement that told me everything. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so no one in the lobby could overhear but making sure she couldn't look away. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't come to you at 22 and say, 'Please let me be responsible for your dysfunction. Let me carry your debts. Let me fix everything while you and Dad enabled Megan again and again. Let me sacrifice my mental health, my relationships, my life, so you could avoid facing yourselves.' I didn't ask for any of it." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I didn't give her time to recover. "You want help? Call a social worker, call a credit counselor, call the same system you always said people like us were too proud to rely on." My hands were trembling slightly, but my voice was steady. "I'm not your bailout anymore." I turned and walked back toward my office. I didn't even check to see if she followed. I could feel her presence behind me shrinking smaller and smaller as I reached for my office door. When I closed it, I stood there for a moment, hands still on the doorknob, head bowed. The weight on my shoulders was heavy but different now. Heavy because I was holding firm, not because I was carrying them. But that wasn't the end. A week later, a letter arrived at my apartment. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter-thick envelope, official-looking. I hesitated before opening it, my pulse quickening again. Inside was an investigation summary from my bank. Apparently someone had tried to open a business loan using my name, my social security number, and the tax ID of the now-closed family fund, an $80,000 loan. The business name Megan Grace Recovery Services, LLC. My hands went cold as I sat down hard at the kitchen table letter, trembling between my fingers. There was no such company, no LLC, no license. Just paperwork, a forged application complete with a signature that eerily matched my own. I called the bank's fraud department immediately. The woman on the line was calm, methodical, as she pulled up the file. "Sir," she said after a moment, "it appears someone close to you tried to pose as your financial partner. If you hadn't closed that account when you did this application, might have gone through without detection." That realization hit harder than I expected. They hadn't just used me all those years. They had planned to keep using me quietly, tying me to a financial obligation I never agreed to, setting me up to take the fall when it all collapsed. Suddenly, all the pieces clicked into place, the silence, the cold exile, the polite step away. It wasn't a reaction, it was a setup, a calculated attempt to remove me emotionally while keeping me financially entangled. They hadn't just wanted my help, they wanted my liability. And when I refused, when I cut the cord completely, I became the villain in the story they'd written to protect themselves from the consequences of their own choices. That night, I didn't sleep much. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table until the early morning hours, filing reports with the bank, with the police, with the IRS. I compiled the forged documents, gathered text message history, prepared affidavits. Every keystroke felt like therapy, quiet, deliberate cleansing. And just as dawn began to break over the Houston skyline, my phone rang again. A number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something made me swipe the screen and lift it to my ear. It was Megan. Her voice was shaking, but not in anger this time, in regret. "Michael," she whispered, I get it now. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." But I only had one question. I kept my tone soft, measured. "Did you know about the business application?" There was a beat of silence. Then the line went dead. The line had gone dead, but her silence spoke louder than any apology she could have offered. I sat there holding my phone, listening to the empty static for a moment longer before finally setting it down. My heart was pounding, not from anger, but from clarity. Megan had known. Maybe not all the details, but enough. She knew they were setting me up. As the morning sun broke through the blinds, I felt the shift inside me solidify. This wasn't just about one failed loan or a series of missed calls. This was generational, a pattern deeply embedded, normalized, and passed down like a twisted family heirloom. The Turner family had always leaned on the strong one. And now, because I had refused, they had turned me into their villain. But I wasn't the villain. I was finally free. That day I submitted everything. Police reports, fraud affidavits, copies of the forged documents, even screenshots of text threads where Megan had hinted at starting a nonprofit for recovery in my name. Every click felt purposeful, like closing a door that should have been locked years ago. As night fell, I received another unexpected call, but this time it wasn't Megan or my parents. It was Uncle Raymond, the family's black sheep. The one they all whispered about, dismissed as unstable, selfish, dangerous even. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but when his name appeared on my phone, something told me to answer. His voice was calm, almost amused. "Michael," he said, "I heard about what you did, about the fund, about the loan." I froze. "How do you even know?" Raymond chuckled softly. "I always know more than they think. You're not the first they drained, you know, just the first who shut the faucet off." His words hit me harder than I expected. Suddenly so much made sense, the way the family had always spoken about him with disdain. He hadn't abandoned them, he'd escaped, like me. "You were the strong one before me," I murmured. "No," he replied gently. "I was the foolish one who tried to fix them until I learned. You've learned too, finally." His voice carried both sadness and relief. We talked for almost an hour about the patterns, the silent expectations, the guilt wrapped up as duty. Raymond admitted he'd cut ties years ago after being manipulated into co-signing on loans he couldn't afford. When he refused to keep paying, they ostracized him, branded him as unreliable and cold. "You're just the next in line," he said quietly, "but you're the first to document everything. They can't spin this the way they did with me." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, as his words sank in. For the first time in this ordeal, I didn't feel alone. His call gave me something unexpected, a map of where this path could lead. Not just separation, but peace. After we hung up, I sat for a while in the quiet of my apartment. The kitchen still smelled faintly of coffee, the trash can still held that old silver key buried deep under yesterday's junk. I hadn't dug it out. I never would. And just as I was beginning to relax, just as the adrenaline finally started to ebb, my phone buzzed again. This time an email notification from Megan. The subject line was simple: "You win." But the body of the message chilled me. "Just so you know, I'm writing about all of this. My version. I'm calling it Toxic Siblings. It's going to be a podcast. Everyone will know what you did." A surge of emotions rushed through me. Disbelief, frustration, even a bitter kind of amusement. This was how they would spin it. Now paint me as cold, selfish, toxic. Publicly. To an audience who didn't know the years of quiet sacrifice I had endured. I closed my eyes for a moment, centering myself. They still didn't understand. They thought this was about reputation, about controlling the narrative. They couldn't grasp that I no longer cared what story they told. Still, the thought of a podcast, of my name dragged through the mud by the very people who drained me dry for years, it struck a nerve. But I wouldn't play their game anymore. I opened my laptop and began drafting a simple but definitive response. A polite cease and desist letter, outlining the falsities in advance, copied to a lawyer I'd quietly retained after the business loan fiasco. They wanted to escalate, I was ready, but on my terms this time, legally, calmly, decisively. And then just as I was about to send the draft, my phone vibrated one more time. A voicemail from Dad. His voice cracked and exhausted. "Michael, your mom's in the hospital. It's bad. She's asking for you." I sat still, the cursor blinking on the screen in front of me, the draft email open, ready to be sent. My breath caught. They were unraveling, yes, but this was different. The voicemail from Dad lingered in my ears long after I stopped playing it. His voice was thin, raw, and almost pleading. "Michael, your mom's in the hospital. It's bad. She's asking for you." The words hit differently than all the other desperate calls and messages they'd thrown at me these past weeks. For the first time, there was no accusation, no entitlement in his tone, just a broken man grasping at a last hope. But was it real? Or another manipulation, another attempt to pull me back into the endless cycle of guilt, obligation, and quiet sacrifice? I sat at my kitchen table for a long moment, fingers tracing absent circles on the wood grain. Part of me wanted to rush to the hospital to be the dutiful son one last time. But the other part, the part that had survived these past few weeks, the part that had closed, the fund exposed the spreadsheet, and stood firm while they unraveled, held me firmly in place. I finally exhaled, leaning back in my chair. My pulse slowed as I thought carefully. If this was real, if Mom truly needed me in a medical crisis that was different, that transcended even years of betrayal. But the truth was, I no longer trusted their word at face value. I couldn't afford to. Still, curiosity and caution tugged at me. I called the hospital, directly bypassing Dad entirely. The woman at the front desk was polite but guarded. "Yes, Susan Turner is here," she confirmed, "but she's stable. Observation only. No immediate danger." My shoulders sank with relief and frustration. Of course. Even this had been exaggerated to draw me back. The relief didn't make me feel any better. It made me feel used all over again. They hadn't changed. Even at this moment, they were still manipulating emotions, still twisting reality, just enough to bait me into rushing back into their orbit. I stayed home that night, and as the city lights of Houston flickered through my window, I thought about Uncle Raymond's words. You're not the first they drained, just the first who documented everything. He was right. This wasn't just my story. It was generational. In the days that followed, their silence returned, but it felt different this time, more calculated, more ominous. No pleading texts, no dramatic voicemails. Even Megan's podcast threat hadn't materialized yet. The absence of noise was almost worse than their chaos. Then came the letter. A thick envelope in my mailbox, no return address. My name printed in sharp block letters. Inside was a set of documents, meticulously prepared, almost too professional, Megan's draft complaint for small claims court. She was suing me for emotional distress and failure to provide agreed financial support. I laughed out loud, bitter and hollow, but my fingers trembled as I flipped through the papers. It wasn't the money that startled me, it was the audacity. She actually thought she could drag me into court, force me back into their game, use the system itself as a new weapon. But buried near the back of the packet was something far worse, a copy of the original application for the business loan. Megan's signature, my forged signature, Dad's co-signature. It was all there, and this time, it was physical evidence. In that moment, I realized the game wasn't over. Not yet. They weren't just willing to burn bridges, they were willing to burn themselves if it meant trying to take me with them. I called my attorney immediately. They're escalating, I said flatly. We need to be prepared for whatever's next. That night I barely slept, but unlike before, the anxiety didn't control me, it focused me. I made lists, I checked every credit account and monitoring service I secured, every password, every bank account, every document. I scanned every old piece of paperwork I had stored away, making sure there were no lingering vulnerabilities. And then as I sat at my desk just before sunrise, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Megan. It wasn't Dad. It was a LinkedIn message from Tyler. Yes, that Tyler, Megan's abusive ex. His message was simple, but it froze me nonetheless. Didn't expect to hear your name again. I saw what's happening. Thought you should know you weren't the only one she played. A chill crept down my spine. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, as I realized that Megan's betrayal might run even deeper than I thought. Tyler's message stayed on my screen longer than it should have. The simplicity of it was what made it hit so hard. You weren't the only one she played. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed tightly over my chest, as if physically holding myself together. The memories rushed in, not just of Megan's constant needs, but of every time she'd manufactured chaos to keep attention on her, sympathy flowing her way. Even Tyler, who everyone had labeled as the villain in her story, had apparently been caught in her web. The truth was bigger, darker than I realized, and that realization didn't break me, it steadied me. I took a breath and replied to him, "What do you mean?" His answer was immediate, like he'd been waiting for the opportunity. She lied to me about debts, took out loans in both our names. When I finally said no, she painted me as the bad guy to your whole family. I left before she ruined me too. You were her next project. His next words were what cemented it for me. You're not crazy, man. You were the mark. For all those years, I had doubted my instincts, doubted whether I was being too cold, too rigid, too selfish. This was my confirmation. It wasn't me. It had never been me. My chest felt lighter, my shoulders relaxed, but beneath that relief was a quiet anger, sharp and precise. In the following weeks, I tied up every loose end. The attorney I'd hired worked swiftly to counter Megan's frivolous lawsuit. Her claim was dismissed before it even reached court. My credit remained intact. My accounts were secure. The podcast threat evaporated into thin air, never materializing beyond her bitter email. It was as if the moment I fully withdrew, the whole fragile facade they'd built collapsed under its own weight. And then silence. Not the anxious waiting kind of silence, but real silence. No more emails, no more voicemails, no more desperate visits or messages sent through intermediaries. I thought it would feel empty, but it didn't. It felt free. One night I walked through my new neighborhood in Austin, a place where no one knew my story, where no one knew my family name, where no one saw me as the responsible one or the fixer. The Texas air was warm and dry, the streetlights humming faintly. I stopped at a quiet corner bakery, the same kind Aunt Carolyn had met me at that day, and as I ordered coffee, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked tired, yes, but lighter, less haunted. That's when the final twist arrived. A small envelope slipped under my apartment door. No return address, just my name printed neatly on the front. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a Christmas card signed by Mom and Dad. The photo inside showed them sitting by a sparsely decorated tree, their smiles stiff, their faces older than I remembered. No note, no plea, just the image itself, a performance for the camera. And then tucked behind the card a smaller scrap of paper. Megan's handwriting, a simple message, hope you're happy, you'll always be part of this family whether you like it or not. I folded the paper slowly, deliberately, and placed it carefully into the trash. It felt like a ritual, a final symbolic act. The silver key was long gone. The spreadsheet archived, the accounts closed, but this was the emotional tether I had needed to cut. As I sat on my couch that night, looking around my half-furnished apartment, bare floors, unpacked boxes, I realized something profound. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for them to call. I wasn't checking my phone every few minutes. I wasn't expecting chaos to reappear around every corner. This was peace, real peace. But just as that thought settled over me, another message pinged on my phone, a name I didn't recognize. The message read, "Hi Michael, I'm your cousin Sarah. I don't know if you remember me, but I think it happened to me too. Story 2, at last they arrived at my baby shower with nothing, no present. This is merely a loan document for $15,000 for my brother's vehicle." Unexpected. "You're helping your brother." Dad grinned. Mom added, "Be thankful that we trust you." I simply responded, "I get it," then hit the cancel button on the planned payment. After taking a call 15 minutes later, he yelled, "What did you sign?" At last they attend my baby shower. No warning, not a message, simply entered, 30 minutes late, loud enough to pull all the attention from the games and gifts. My mom wore her best supportive smile, the kind she rehearses when she's trying to look like a parent. And my dad, as usual, didn't bother with pretending. No present. Not even flowers, just a manila envelope. My dad pulled out like it was a present. "Surprise," he said, placing it in my lap like he expected applause. "You're helping your brother." I blinked. He gestured to the document inside a loan agreement. $15,000 co-signed in my name for a car. My brother had apparently already driven off the lot. My mom chimed in, touching my shoulder like we were sharing a proud moment. "Be grateful. We trust you. This is a big deal for him." That's when it hit me. They weren't asking. It was done. Scheduled to process Monday morning, my signature had been forged, or worse, lifted from the times they'd needed help with paperwork before. The room was still buzzing with party chatter, a table of cupcakes, untouched pink decorations, swaying under the AC. I just smiled quietly, unlocked my phone beneath the table, opened the banking app, navigated to the pending transaction, canceled. That was it. 15 minutes later, my brother's phone rang. I watched from across the room as he answered, nodded, then shouted, "What did you sign?" He looked straight at me. I didn't flinch, just kept sipping from the plastic flute of sparkling cider my cousin had handed me earlier. He stormed out. My dad followed. My mom stayed long enough to mutter something about how I was making a scene even though I hadn't moved, but inside something had. It didn't hit all at once. That would have been merciful. It came in layers, like peeling back rotten wallpaper and realizing the whole wall is molded. That envelope wasn't the first offense, just the most recent insult on a ledger. So long. It should have its chapters. Because as I sat there watching the room, pretend nothing had happened, something clicked. This wasn't a one-time overstep. This was routine, a system they built, and I'd been the foundation quietly, repeatedly. Foolishly, I thought back to last year, my brother's birthday. I'd covered the dinner 800 a tab at a rooftop steakhouse. I didn't even get a slice of cake, just a thank you text. That autocorrect had my name wrong. Before that, the HVAC replacement at my parents' house, $700. "We'll pay you back once the taxes hit." My dad had said the refund came. The repayment never did. The time I spotted my sister $2,000 to get her through a rough patch. She posted new designer boots, the same weekend tag still on them, in the mirror selfie. But I kept giving, kept swallowing the bile because maybe, just maybe, this time they'd see me. Not as a convenience, not as a wallet with legs, but as someone who mattered. They never did. At my own baby shower, I was a footnote to a transaction, a hose to a humiliation. And still they expected me to smile. And I almost did. I almost let it go again. But then I remembered a memory I hadn't touched in years. Sophomore year of college. I'd just come home for the holidays. First time after the accident that changed everything. I was quiet, adjusting. learning how to live differently. At the dinner table, I offered to help with dishes. My hand slipped a plate shattered. My mom laughed, not out of cruelty, but dismissal. Guess some things you'll just never be good at. My dad didn't look up from the TV. My brother whispered, "You shouldn't have come back." They thought I didn't hear, but I did. And I remembered. I remember being their afterthought for decades. The strong one which was code for the one we can ignore because he won't explode. I remembered every time they used "you're so independent" as an excuse to never show up, to never call, to never ask how I was doing, even when I got pregnant alone on my own terms. They never offered help, never sent a card, barely acknowledged it. But now I was useful again. Now they needed a signature, a safety net. Now they showed up with a loan document. No gift. No. Congratulations. No. How are you holding up? Just a forged line on a contract and a guilt trip about family obligation. And that's when I saw the full shape of the thing. I give, they take. I show up. They left me out. I stay quiet. They assume consent. And it wasn't random. It was trained, conditioned, expected. Because every time I let it slide, they built the next insult a little bolder. They didn't just disrespect me, they discounted me. They rewrote the story so thoroughly that they believed it, that I was okay with being used, that I liked it, that my silence was agreement, that my understood meant permission. But I wasn't a helper anymore. I was the product, the infrastructure, the financial institution backing their bad decisions. And the worst part, they weren't ashamed. They were entitled. They believed I owed them because I didn't scream, because I didn't fight, because I didn't pull away when I should have. But I was done. I saw the pattern now. Every flashback that had haunted me, the canceled invitations, the backhanded compliments, the withheld affection, wasn't a fluke. It was a blueprint. And now that I'd finally read it, I was ready to tear the whole thing down. Not out of vengeance, out of clarity. They didn't see a sun. They saw a solution. But now the asset was logging out, and they were about to learn what it felt like to lose their favorite resource. They never taught me boundaries, only guilt. They raised me on obligation. That twisted brand of love where sacrifice is the only currency and silence is proof of loyalty. But they forgot to teach me what happens when that currency burns out. When the silent one finally starts moving. I moved fast. By midnight, I was in bed, laptop open, earbuds and baby monitor app on one screen, banking app on the other. The $15,000 loan had been processed but not fully withdrawn. They used a shared savings account to legitimize the transaction. An old joint account I'd set up when Dad was between jobs. I left it open out of habit. Their habit of needing help. Big mistake. First step. I froze the account. Second step. I called the credit union, reported the transaction as unauthorized. I knew the system worked in systems. I had receipts, timestamps, logins. My name on the account gave me full rights to dispute. By morning, the loan was locked for review. Then came the real cleanup. I opened the financial audit I'd started months ago, a private doc titled Failsafe, a running log of every dollar I'd funneled to my family in the past 5 years. Rent covers, bailouts, phone bills, health premiums, car repairs, mortgage overages, total $117,000, not even including the wedding gifts. Holiday trips or emergencies that always seem to happen on 3-day weekends. I started shutting things down like levers in a control room. The car insurance. 6 people under one group policy. Might I remove them all? Let them get their own coverage at their own risk levels. My brother would be the first to notice when the DMV flagged his expired proof. The streaming accounts, everyone gone. Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, Spotify, family. Years of piggybacking off my subscriptions. I deactivated every shared profile, even the one my dad cheekily named Family CEO. The cloud storage. My mother's entire digital photo archive was hosted under my drive. Thousands of baby photos, scanned albums. The folder labeled Memories. I didn't delete it. I just downloaded it and moved it offline. Left her a note. Available on request. Respectfully. The security system. I'd installed it myself. Their smart locks, their alarms, their thermostat, all wired to my business dashboard. Within minutes, I removed admin access and replaced their control app with a default prompt. Please contact your system provider. Let them call customer support. And then the kill switch, the trust. 3 years ago, I'd started a legal trust for my child, future-oriented, bulletproof. What my family didn't know was that I'd quietly included them as contingent beneficiaries, not out of love, out of obligation. Just in case I told myself that morning, I rewrote the trust, removed every one of them. My mother, my father, my brother, their names vanished with the click of a key. I wasn't their legacy. I was their fallback. Not anymore. At 10:37 a.m., I got the first message. My dad. Hey, bank, saying something about the loan? You fix that. No punctuation, no apology, just assumption. At 11:02, my mom followed up. They need your signature again? Honey, don't be difficult. That word again. Difficult. The crime of having boundaries. I didn't reply. Instead, I logged into the auto loan system, submitted a fraud report, uploaded a scan statement annotated in red arrow to the forged signature caption. Never signed, never agreed, under review. At 1:26 p.m., my brother finally called, didn't leave a voicemail, just sent a text. 5 minutes later. What did you do? I muted the thread. Then I opened my personal document vault one by one. I exported copies of every agreement I had ever co-signed, supported or backed for legal proof. Just in case I wasn't cutting ties, I was keeping records. Let them explain to a judge why they forged a signature on a financial document tied to a newborn's future. By nightfall, I'd reassigned all access rights to my baby's emergency fund, moved our healthcare proxy to my lawyer, and rerouted every tech service in their home to a third-party vendor. They'd always said I was so organized, like it was a hobby. No, it was self-defense. And now it was off. It's the house of cards they built on my silence. Collapse was inevitable. I just removed the last pillar. The best part, I still hadn't said a word to them. No speech, no fight, no drama, just one quiet message to the loan officer handling the review. If they contact me directly, please escalate. By 9 p.m., my mom called again. Then my dad, then my brother. I didn't answer because this wasn't the conversation phase. This was the consequence phase. I didn't expect an apology. I expected noise. And that's exactly what I got. It started with the group chat when they hadn't used since Grandma's funeral suddenly reactivated like it was a family lifeline instead of a landmine. My mother opened the thread with, "We need to talk. This has gone too far. No subject, no salutation, just panic in Times New Roman." My father followed with, "You've embarrassed us." That loan was a gesture of trust, not betrayal. Then my brother, barely trying to contain his rage. "You made things worse for me. You should probably look into this before it escalates." They weren't ashamed of what they did. They were frustrated that things didn't go as expected. The messages came in floods, voice notes, screenshots, warnings, accusations. I watch it all in silence, standing in my kitchen bottle, feeding my daughter, while they melted down on screen. They thought I'd reply. They thought I'd cave. Instead, I took a screenshot of every message, every accusation, and forwarded them to my attorney. No commentary, just as discussed. Here's documentation. An hour later, they switched tactics. Phase 2, pity parade. My mom started sending sad photos, her crying. A blurry pic of my dad holding his head in his hands. A snapshot of a casserole on the stove with a caption. "We made your favorite. Please come over." They really thought baked pasta could erase fraud. Then came the messages disguised as confession. "We were just trying to help your brother. He's going through a lot. You've always been the stable one. We counted on that. Why can't you just understand how hard it is for us?" But none of it was about what they did. It was about how I responded. Because in their minds, the real betrayal wasn't the unauthorized use of my signature. It was the silence. My refusal to engage broke them in ways no shouting ever could. They prepared for a fight. They weren't ready for the absence. And that's when phase 3 hit. They struggled when others started asking questions. I heard from a coworker first. He forwarded me a message. His wife had received from my cousin, who'd clearly been briefed by my mother. "Just so you're aware, there's been some troubling behavior in the family. Anna has been acting out legal stuff. We're concerned." My coworker included a note. "Dude, is everything okay?" I smiled, sent him the full screenshot of the forged loan document, followed by a copy of a dispute case. He replied 30s later, "Never mind, they're insane." But the campaign didn't stop there. They hit Facebook next. A vague post on my mom's page. Sometimes the ones you give the most to end up turning their backs the hardest. We tried. God knows we tried. Then a barrage of sympathy comments from her knitting friends, her church friends, her bridge club. You're a saint. Children today don't understand gratitude. You did your best. They had the audacity to write saint after fraud. That night I sat down and drafted a message, not to them, to everyone else. A single post public, polite, and devastating to those hearing rumors. I canceled a fraudulent auto loan made in my name without my consent. If you need clarity, here's the documentation, and I attached it. Loan copy, dispute confirmation, my formal email to the lender, a black box over my account number, but every signature visible. I didn't write a caption, I didn't name names. The truth didn't need a villain, it already had proof. Within 24 hours, the narrative started to crumble. 3 cousins liked the post. 2 mutual friends removed comments they'd made on my mother's timeline. 1 aunt called to say she was deeply ashamed. She believed their version. That's when the calls really started. Not messages. 'Cause my mom first. I watched the phone ring. She left a voicemail this time. You think you've won? You're tearing us apart. You're making it hard for everyone. Do you even care, my dad? 10 minutes later. You need to delete the post. It's family business. You don't air laundry like this. Family business, that phrase they use like a muzzle. Like a shield against consequences. They didn't want resolution. They wanted reversal. They wanted me to pretend it didn't happen again. But the dam had broken, and I wasn't interested in plugging leaks anymore. Then came the final escalation at 2:17 a.m. I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, no greeting, just a PDF attachment labeled loan options. Underscore, reconsideration, underscore, alternate terms.pdf. Inside a revised agreement. My name removed my brother's signature, added 15,000, a line at the bottom. This supersedes all previous drafts and a note in plain text. This fixes everything. Now you can take down the post. I stared at it for a full minute. They thought they could clean the crime with an edit. No apology, no ownership, just a quiet hope. I'd go back to being their cleanup crew. Instead, I forwarded the email to the bank representative reviewing the transaction, handling my case. Subject line, attempted cover-up, see attached. I wasn't planning on going public, not really. I thought forwarding the forged loan to the fraud department, posting the clean receipts and stepping back would be enough. I thought the line would choke itself when it ran out of air, but they brought oxygen. They kept stoking the fire, thinking I'd smother it to protect them. They didn't realize I'd stopped protecting anyone. It wasn't rage, it wasn't revenge, it was clarity. For years I kept things quiet. This time I chose honesty on curated Instagram posts and whispered family narratives on his difficult, and he never lets things go. And for years I let it stand. Even helped them polish the windows. But not anymore. It started small. A quiet email to the HR rep at the dealership where my brother worked. Hi, I believe a financial document tied to a company loan was forged. The attached PDF includes signatures not authorized by the name listed. I'm submitting this to the lender as fraud, but wanted to alert you as well. No commentary, just facts. Then I sent another email, this time to a client of mine, an account my father once referred to me, whose small firm still ran software under my company's legacy license. Just so you're aware, my family may be attempting to leverage my reputation or name for credit or access. Please direct any requests independently. And don't assume association. No bitterness, just clean detachment. Within a week, I got the first call back from the dealership. The manager didn't say much, just asked if I could confirm the date I received the forged document and whether I had a formal dispute in place. I said yes, sent the full timeline. 3 days later, my brother was placed on administrative leave. Not fired yet, but the mask had cracked. They thought I wouldn't go this far. That was their mistake, because I wasn't going anywhere. They came to me with pressure, emotional manipulation, and false promises. So I responded, not with rage, with receipts. I took every message, every voicemail, every passive-aggressive post and archived it, dated, indexed, sorted. Then I launched a private blog. Not viral, not dramatic, just a clean chronological recounting titled What Really Happened, A Family Story and Documents. Each post was brief. Entry 1. The baby shower, 15,000 auto loan, surprise. Entry 2, forged signature, timeline of events. Entry 3, group text, meltdown, screenshots and analysis. Entry for the cover-up email, no rage, no commentary, just facts and PDFs. I didn't even share the link, but someone found it because within a week I started getting messages. Quiet ones, from extended family, from old teachers, from friends of friends, from a girl I hadn't spoken to since high school who messaged, "Just read your blog. I had no idea." Respect that word. Respect something my own parents never learned to give without conditions. Then came the tipping point. The blog link somehow landed in my mom's church group chat. I know this because she left me a voicemail. "I'll never delete." Her voice was shaking, not with sadness, with panic. "You need to take it down. People are asking questions. Your uncle called this last night. He said we're a disgrace. What have you done?" I hadn't done anything. Just showing the receipts. But for people like them, truth is exposure and exposure is war. Because in their world, image is everything. They could handle dysfunction. So long as it was private, they could handle pain, so long as it was packaged. But this was naked and they were terrified. My dad didn't call. He sent an email. One line, "I hope you realize you've pushed this family to the edge." I stared at it for a long time, then replied, "I didn't start the fire. I didn't ruin the image. I just stopped covering it." And then I posted that 2 entry 5, the final post, because that's all it took. I didn't scream, didn't curse, didn't beg. I didn't fight them. I just shared the facts. And they couldn't look at it without recoiling because the truth wasn't violent. It was inconvenient. And for people who built their lives on curated deception, that was enough to destroy them. They came on a Sunday morning uninvited, unannounced, just stood on my porch like nothing had happened. My mom wore that forced smile she reserves for manipulation disguised as concern. My dad stayed behind her, arms crossed, like backup. She didn't ask for, but knew she'd need. I didn't open the door, just stepped outside and waited. "We want to talk," she started. "You've made your point. Now, let us make ours." I said nothing. "You've gone too far," she added. "This has hurt everyone. Some things are better handled privately." My father cut in. "You don't destroy your family over one mistake." That word again. Mistake, forgery, lies, manipulation. But to them, just a hiccup. Then came the truth. "We need you," she said. "The loan's frozen. Your brother's gone. We're drowning. Now we miss you. Not, we're sorry. Just, we need you." I looked at both of them and finally spoke. "You didn't lose a system. You lost a son." They froze. "You brought a forged contract to my baby shower and called it trust. You built this family on guilt and silence, and I lived in it until now. But I have a daughter, and she will never learn that kind of love." My mother's eyes welled up. "So, that's it. You're cutting us off." I nodded. "You didn't lose dinner. You lost me." I handed her the welcome mat she'd once gifted me. Cheap metaphor, but fitting. Then I turned and walked inside. No slamming doors, no final blow. Just silence. And this time it wasn't mine to carry. It was theirs.